When your enemies realized they couldn't shake your success, they switched strategies. They stopped aiming for your crown and started whispering about your character. That's how it always begins, not with courage, but with quiet poison. Someone decided your peace looked too expensive for their comfort. Your calm too confident for their chaos. So they hired someone to dig, to verify, to find the real story. They thought this time they'd finally uncover something dark about you. But what they didn't expect was to get humbled by the truth. Because every person they questioned didn't feed their rumor, they buried it. The moment they said your name, people shook their heads and said, "Not them, you're barking up the wrong tree." The lies didn't spread, they suffocated. That's what happens when gossip collides with evidence. When your receipts outnumber their stories. When your integrity speaks louder than their envy. You see, when you live right, investigations turn into confirmations. Every accusation became an introduction to your consistency. And the same people they tried to use against you. They became your defenders. The twisted stories they crafted. They snapped back into truth like rubber bands. Because facts don't flinch. And jealousy can't rewrite reality. They wanted to catch you slipping, but ended up tripping over their own reflection. Now you can almost hear it. The sound of disappointment from people who wanted your fall, but got front row seats to your promotion. Take a breath, chosen one. If this already feels personal, that's no accident. This message found you for a reason. Hit that like button, not for me, but to send a signal to the universe. That you still stand tall when the world throws dirt. Now listen closely, because this next part matters. This wasn't just drama. It was divine timing. It was exposure season. They mistook your silence for fear. But silence is how destiny builds suspense. You've been walking through rooms lately where smiles don't match eyes. You can feel the temperature shift when you walk in. And you know the moment you leave, the conversations start. That's not paranoia, that's presence. Your energy lingers. Your light echoes. And when that investigator came around asking who you really are, your reputation spoke before anyone else could. They expected drama and got discipline. They expected arrogance and found grace. Someone said they always stay calm under pressure. Another said, if anything, they've helped more people than they'll ever admit. Imagine the silence in that room. When the report came back, not just clean, but glowing. No scandal, no secrets, just gold. They went looking for dirt and found diamonds. And that's what really burns envy. When those who wanted to prove you're fake end up proving you're realer than they'll ever be. Now their jealousy isn't quiet anymore. You can see it in their body language. How they avoid eye contact, how their tone changes when your name comes up. You've become their living reminder that good still wins. That authenticity still survives the smear. Understand this, they never hated you for what you did. They hated you for what you didn't do. You didn't crack. You didn't hand them chaos. You didn't feed their rumor mill. And when the truth showed up, it didn't just clear your name, it carved your legacy. They thought they were exposing you. But the universe was exposing them. See, once you reach higher levels, the betrayal pattern becomes familiar. The whispers, the fake concern, the silent watchers. But this time, you've seen it before. You already know how the movie ends. With the truth wearing your face and your enemies playing your background music. Because the people who studied you the hardest, they became your unpaid advertisers. Even history repeats this script. They mocked the innovators, now we quote them. They doubted the visionaries, now we follow their footsteps. You, chosen one, are part of that same lineage of misunderstood greatness. You're not being investigated, you're being documented. Every lie became proof of your patience. Every rumor became evidence of your endurance. You weren't being tested, you were being recorded for your next victory reel. The universe saw it all, the humiliation, the gossip, the fake smiles, and said, perfect, let's turn this into your upgrade. Because now, your name doesn't just float in conversations. It stands for respect. People are realizing the calmest one in the room was the most dangerous all along. And those who sent the investigator, they ended up falling into their own trap. They didn't just fail to destroy you, they made you legendary. This is your vindication season. Every whisper meant to harm you has turned into proof of your truth. You didn't need to fight, you didn't need to explain. Your character did the work while you stayed silent. And now, the same people who tried to bury your name can't stop speaking it with awe. So listen, chosen one. The story not over. You're about to see how every lie flipped into your recognition. Drop 777 in the comments if you're ready to witness how the universe defended your name without you saying a word. They went searching for dirt and found the roots of greatness instead. They went digging for a downfall and uncovered destiny. You can't expose someone who's already living in their truth. You can only expose your obsession with trying to bring them down. So let them talk. Because while they're whispering your name, they thought they were studying you. But what they were really doing was staring into a mirror. Every rumor they whispered was a reflection of the things they hated about themselves. That's why they couldn't destroy you. They were trying to break glass that only showed them their own cracks. You've got to see it clearly, chosen one. Those who tried to expose you were never chasing truth. They were chasing control. Because the moment your light started drawing attention, their insecurities started sweating. You became the story they couldn't stop scrolling through. They didn't want to understand you. They wanted to undo you. But how do you dismantle someone whose foundation was built on reality, not performance? How do you discredit a person whose quietest flaw is refusing to be petty? They came expecting chaos and found composure. They came searching for shame and stumbled into strength. Your realness disarmed their rumor mill. Every question they asked returned the same answer. Solid, consistent, respected. The investigator couldn't invent drama where discipline already lived. Picture that moment when the report came back. Actually, they've always been the same, kind, focused, professional, never messy. That silence on the other end wasn't peace, it was defeat. Their entire plan flipped upside down. They handed you a background check, and you turned it into background blessing. They wanted to reveal a fraud, and ended up revealing their own projection. Because here's the truth, chosen one. Jealousy never targets mistakes, it targets excellence. They don't hate your wrongs, they hate your rights. They hate that you didn't shatter when they pushed. They hate that you don't panic when they whisper. They hate that your peace is louder than their noise. What really burns them is that your name carries weight. Not because you forced it, but because your integrity left fingerprints everywhere you went. They thought you were acting, but while they were performing for attention, you were performing in purpose. You became proof that honesty and consistency are still power moves. In a world that rewards confusion, you don't have skeletons, you have standards. And that's why they can't stand you. You're the contradiction that ruins their narrative. They called you fake, but real people keep confirming you're the truth. And yes, you've probably wondered, why me? Why can't they just stop? Because people who lose control of their own story will always try to rewrite yours. You remind them of what they could have been if they hadn't traded values for validation. Your glow exposes their emptiness. So they dig, they probe, they gossip. But all that digging just polishes your reputation brighter. Every rumor they planted turned into a garden of receipts. They watered lies, and you bloomed proof. They didn't just fail to ruin you. They accidentally marketed your authenticity. Now the same mouths that said, "too good to be true," are realizing you were just too true to be shaken. Here's the cold fact. People can't destroy what they can't define. They mistake your calm for weakness. They mistake your boundaries for guilt. But you're not hiding, you're healing. You're not silent out of fear, you're silent because you already won. They wanted to watch you unravel. But you're the one holding the thread. You walked right through their trap. And they tripped over their own expectations. Let's be honest, this entire investigation was never about facts. It was a fantasy they built to make their gossip feel justified. But when real evidence showed up, their storyline collapsed. The investigator came back with data, not drama. And that broke them more than anything. Because now they can't even pretend they were right. You've become living proof that the universe defends those who walk in truth. And truth doesn't argue, it reveals. Your reputation didn't need protection. It only needed patience. The longer they spoke, the more their words exposed them. Every rumor was a rope they wrapped around their own credibility. You didn't chase revenge. You stayed still. And while you stayed still, they unraveled. That's poetic justice. Here's the real victory. While they waited for your name to collapse, it climbed. Your name is being spoken in rooms for all the right reasons. Their names fading behind closed doors. They wanted scandal. They got a standing ovation. They prayed for dirt. And the universe handed them gold, your gold. Remember this moment, chosen one. Never explain your purity to people addicted to confusion. Truth doesn't tremble under pressure, it gets taller. You're living proof that no investigation can erase integrity. That's been built through years of quiet loyalty and consistency. They tried to put your name on trial. It ended up in headlines of admiration. They wanted to ruin your reputation. Instead, they made it unforgettable. They tried to feast on your downfall, but choked on your elevation. That's the reward of clean living. It turns gossip into gospel, lies into lessons, and enemies into free publicity. So let them keep talking, because every time your name leaves their lips, it glows brighter. You don't need revenge. You are the revenge. Their disappointment, your justice. Their obsession, your trophy. You didn't have to lift a finger. The universe already handled the cleanup. And that's what stings them most. You didn't just pass their test. You were never even taking it. Number 2, the streets testified. When truth and lies walk the same streets, only one leaves footprints that last. They thought the crowd would turn on you. But the crowd had receipts. They believed their whispers would become your headlines. But when the smoke cleared, the truth started walking. And it had a louder voice than every rumor combined. Because when you've lived right, treated people well, moved with grace instead of hidden chaos, your reputation becomes your defense system. You don't have to beg people to speak up for you. The streets do it naturally. And that's what burned them most. Picture this. They're sitting in their little gossip circle, confident the rumor has spread. They can almost hear people rolling eyes at your name. But when a real investigator showed up, someone who wanted facts, not feelings, the truth hit them like a cold slap. Every person they questioned said the same thing. No, they're solid, never caused drama, always respectful. Each word was another nail in the coffin of their scheme. Their lies died before they ever reached the courtroom of public opinion. Because reputation may begin in whispers, but it's proven in echoes. You didn't need to clear your name. Your character already did it. The universe doesn't let false energy win for long. It flips it right back. The same streets they hoped would drag your name ended up polishing it like glass. They underestimated how many people had quietly watched your kindness, your consistency, your calm. Real ones rarely speak, but when truth is on trial, they testify. Your enemies counted on the crowd. They thought noise could drown reality. But the world's waking up. People are tired of lies. They can feel authenticity when they see it. They've seen you show up. Stay focused. Do the work. Carry your dignity like armor. So when the rumors tried to rise, truth walked in, and everyone recognized its voice. Take your place, chosen one. Your presence stood taller than any whisper. You don't need to defend your name when your actions speak for themselves. That's the power of living right when nobody's looking. Those who tried to soil your reputation forgot one key thing. You've built quiet allies without even realizing it. People who respect the way you move, who admire how you handle situations they couldn't, who remember your self-control when others would have snapped. That's what saved you. You didn't campaign for approval, your integrity campaigned for you. Imagine it now, one of your enemies glued to their screen, refreshing their phone, expecting to hear some damning news. But instead, every single person the investigator spoke to gave you glowing reviews. Picture their faces when they hear. They're honestly one of the calmest people I've ever met, always professional, always real. You could almost see their confidence deflate, like a balloon losing air. Because their entire fantasy needed believers, and all they got were witnesses to your truth. They can't stand it. They can't handle the fact that the very streets they polluted with gossip now sing your name. That's justice in its purest form, when the noise of deception is drowned out by the truth. You can't manipulate a narrative that's already been written by real experience. People didn't just remember your face. They remembered your energy. The way you stayed kind when others would have snapped. The way you held your composure when chaos surrounded you. That's what built your defense long before anyone tried to attack you. Hear what they'll never admit. Deep down, they knew this moment would come. They knew if anyone took a real look, your record would come back spotless. But envy doesn't care about truth, it thrives on fantasy. They needed a story to make them feel powerful again. They needed to believe tearing you down would make them relevant. But gossip is a fragile weapon. It wounds the wielder more than the target. The same mouths that cursed you will one day choke on your name. When truth reclaims its crown, and chosen one, truth returned. The people they tried to recruit did fold. The ones who knew you from work, from your neighborhood, from shared experiences. They spoke facts. They didn't have to exaggerate, they just told the truth. And that truth hit harder than any defense you could have built. Maybe you're wondering, why does it still hurt? Why does betrayal still sting? Because even though the truth won, the betrayal still cuts deep. But here's what you need to understand. The universe doesn't let false accusations die quietly. It lets them backfire spectacularly. That's why you're starting to see it. People pulling away, avoiding eye contact, changing their tone. They're embarrassed because the story they once believed in has collapsed. And the person they doubted, still standing, still calm, still respected. Imagine walking down the same streets where they used to whisper about you. And now, those whispers turn into nods of respect. People you never thought noticed you now saying, "I've heard nothing but good things about you." That's not coincidence. That's reputation echoing through walls they tried to silence. Truth doesn't need to shout. It travels quietly, but lands with undeniable force. And it's landing now, one conversation at a time, proving that your consistency was always the real headline. This is the beauty of clean living. It doesn't beg for attention, but when attention comes, it glows. You've become a living contradiction to their lies. The very streets they thought would destroy you are now your audience. The mouths that mocked you now echo your behavior. That's poetic justice in action. And it's funny, isn't it? They thought they could rewrite your image, but your reality refused to change the script. That's what integrity does. It keeps your truth stable while their lies crumble from exhaustion. Every attempt to frame you only made the contrast sharper. Your calm against their chaos. Your truth against their fiction. Your dignity against their desperation. The louder they lied, the stronger your silence spoke. That's why they're furious now. Because no matter what story they tell, it gets overshadowed by the truth of who you really are. They can't rewrite what too many people have already witnessed. The streets didn't just fail to confirm their lies. They flipped the script entirely. Your name now circulates as a lesson in endurance, not a target of gossip. And that chosen one is your ultimate victory. You didn't argue. You didn't expose them. You let the truth take the spotlight. And it delivered flawlessly. Every lie now points back to them. Every rumor now exposes the envy that created it. You didn't need revenge. You just needed patience. When you walk with truth, the universe becomes your publicist. That's what happened here. You didn't chase rumors. You replaced them with results. You didn't beg to be understood. You simply kept moving forward. And the world caught up. Now the very streets that once doubted you are the ones singing your name. And those who started it all, they're hiding in the shadows of their own noise. So stand tall, chosen one. Let them stay mad. Let them replay their embarrassment in silence. Because the streets have already spoken. And they spoke the language of truth. Your story isn't just vindicated. It's legendary. Now the investigator may have asked questions, but the world answered for you. And what they said was undeniable. You were never the problem. You were the proof. Number 3, even the ones who didn't like you spoke the truth. When even your quiet critics can't find dirt on you, you've already won the loudest battle. They thought silence would finally turn against you. They thought, let's ask the quiet ones, the ones who barely spoke, the ones who might have a grudge. That was the plan. If they couldn't twist your friends, they'd try flipping the bystanders. But what they didn't realize was that even your quietest witnesses had nothing but truth to share. And that's when the panic started spreading through their circle. How do you destroy someone whose consistency even strangers can vouch for? Imagine that moment when the investigator reaches out to a coworker, someone who never really spoke much, someone they assumed might say, "Yeah, I never liked them." But instead, that person says, "They were always professional, never disrespectful, just focused on their work." Picture the stunned silence that followed. They expected dirt and got a report card of discipline. Your character left an imprint in rooms you never even entered. You didn't campaign for respect. You earned it quietly, one action at a time. That's why they're so furious now. Because even those who didn't like you won't lie about you. That's the kind of integrity you can't fake. And they'll never reach. Maybe you're still wondering, but what about the ones who misunderstood me? Let's be real. Some people didn't like your calm because it mirrored their chaos. But dislike isn't dishonor. They might not have vibed with you, but deep down, they know you never crossed the line. And that's the difference between enemies and haters. Enemies will fight you, but haters will envy your peace. But in the end, both will have to admit you never gave them a reason to attack. They tried to break you with whispers, but those whispers are now powerless. Because the truth carries more weight than 1,000 rumors. Truth doesn't need to scream. It doesn't need to beg for attention. It just sits there, undeniable, like a quiet force that can't be ignored. You can't twist the words of people who have only ever seen your grace. That's what destroyed them. Their entire smear campaign relied on assumption, not evidence. They thought someone, anyone, would finally confirm their twisted story. But all they got were neutral voices that leaned in your favor. The kind of quiet honesty that says, "I don't know them well, but I've never seen them act fake." And that single truth sliced through every layer of fiction they carefully constructed. That's what makes your story so powerful. You didn't need everyone to love you. You just needed to live right, and you did. You carried yourself in such a way that even those who couldn't care less couldn't deny your steadiness. That's how powerful authenticity is. It writes its own testimony, and it doesn't need a cheerleader to do it. It just stands there like a mirror, reflecting everyone's true intentions back at them. When even the silent ones speak truth, the liars start to choke on their own echoes. And that's where your enemies are now, choking on the disappointment they created for themselves. They were counting on whispers, rumors, and speculation. But instead, they're staring at walls of integrity, wondering why their plot fell apart. They thought quiet people would confirm chaos, but instead, they confirmed your composure. They thought your absence meant guilt, but it meant peace. You weren't pretending to be flawless. You were just being real. You've made mistakes like everyone else, but you never hid behind lies or games. You owned your path, stayed respectful, stayed in your lane. And that's what makes your name so hard to stain. You've lived your truth consistently for far too long. You're not spotless. You're transparent. And that scares them more than perfection ever could. Now they're sitting there, frustrated, replaying every conversation. They've run out of ammunition. The quiet witnesses they counted on have become living proof of your character. Even those who didn't like you had to admit you're solid. And that's what crushed them. So remember this, chosen one. Silence doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes it's just the sound of your truth standing undefeated. They tried to drag you through mud, but all they did was wash your name clean. When even the quiet ones speak well of you, it's not luck. It's proof that your life leaves an honest trail wherever you go. Number 4, the report didn't break them, the reflection did. You can't hate the truth without hating the part of yourself it exposes. They were so sure this so-called investigation would ruin you. They imagined your image cracking under pressure, your reputation collapsing in public. But instead of uncovering flaws, the light they tried to use against you became a mirror that showed their own insecurities. The report didn't just come back clean. It came back too clean. Every fact, every statement, every confirmation of your integrity hit them harder than any rumor ever could. Because the truth wasn't just protecting you, it was humiliating them. They expected to find skeletons in your closet, but the only bones rattling were their own insecurities. They wanted to expose your mess, but instead they exposed their obsession with seeing you fall. That's what stung the most. This wasn't about justice or curiosity. It was about control. They thought, if I can prove they're not perfect, maybe I'll stop feeling so small next to them. But perfection was never your goal. Peace was. And while they were busy dissecting your life, they forgot to look at the chaos in their own. When truth walks into the room, lies start sweating. That's what happened here. The more people spoke well of you, the more the walls closed in on them. The more they heard how consistent, respectful, and reliable you've been, the more the contrast burned. It's one thing to lose an argument. It's another to lose it to your own reflection. Because that's what you've become for them. A mirror they can't stand to look into. Imagine them sitting there, waiting for bad news. Waiting for the investigator to say, "You were right, they're not who they pretend to be." Instead, the investigator says, "Honestly, everyone I spoke to respects them. There's nothing but good feedback." You can picture the silence that followed. The stiff smile, the fake nod. That's the sound of someone realizing they've been fighting a ghost that only existed in their imagination. The cleaner your name gets, the dirtier their envy feels. Every time the report praised you, it pierced their ego like a blade. Deep down, they knew what people admired in you were the very things they lack. Your discipline, your emotional control, your quiet confidence. All reminders of the potential they abandoned. You didn't expose them with words. Your life did. They weren't mad about losing the investigation. They were mad about what they lost. The illusion that they were better. The story they told themselves about you was supposed to make them feel powerful. It was supposed to make sense of their jealousy. But the investigation stripped that away. It didn't just say, "You're innocent." It screamed, "They lied." And that's unbearable for people who depend on lies to feel alive. Maybe you've asked yourself, why are they still angry if the truth already came out? Because the truth didn't just end the rumor. It ended their comfort. Before they could tell themselves, everyone will see who they really are. They now have to face the fact that everyone already sees. And it's you who stands in the light. That kind of exposure is brutal for fragile egos. You didn't embarrass them publicly, but the truth did it privately. And that's far worse. Integrity is the loudest revenge. You don't have to shout when your life speaks for itself. That's what's happening now. Every clean word about you is a silent slap to their pride. They're not haunted by your success. They're haunted by the reflection of who they could have been if they'd chosen growth over gossip. You're a mirror they can't escape. And every time they see you win with grace, it taunts them with what they lack. Number 5, they tried to write your story, but the truth rewrote theirs. When lies lose their rhythm, truth starts playing louder, and no one dances to fiction anymore. They thought they were the storytellers. They thought they could control the script of your life, twist the plot, and decide how others saw you. That was their weapon. Not fists, not facts, but narrative control. They whispered in corners, spread half-truths in private messages, and turned your peace into something suspicious. They misread your silence as guilt, your distance as arrogance, and your calm as manipulation. They wanted the world to see you through their bitterness. But here's what they forgot. Narratives only work until someone checks the source. Manipulation collapses the moment evidence walks in. That's exactly what happened. When the investigators started asking around, reality became the wrecking ball. Suddenly, every coworker, friend, and casual acquaintance told the same truth. You weren't who they said you were. You weren't fake. You weren't messy. You weren't hiding anything. You were simply you. And that's when their castle of gossip started crumbling like wet paper. Because no amount of lies can survive a united testimony of truth. Imagine their faces when they realized their audience had flipped. The people they once fooled began connecting dots. How your actions never matched the rumors. How your quiet confidence contradicted every insult. Wait, maybe they were never the problem. That's the moment control slipped out of their hands. Because once truth starts trending, lies go out of fashion fast. They didn't just lose power. They lost their platform. They went from being the narrators of your downfall to being the subjects of their own defeat. Exposure. People started asking the questions they feared most. Why were they so obsessed with someone who's never even mentioned them? Why go so hard to destroy someone who just minds their business? Those questions are poison to manipulators. Because once people start thinking for themselves, the illusion dies. The loudest lie still bows to the quiet proof of consistency. Your actions became your defense. You didn't argue, you didn't react. You just kept showing up, doing right, and letting time do the talking. And that's what killed their script. Time. The longer people watched, the more the truth became undeniable. Your peace outlasted their performance. Your calm dismantled their chaos. They built their story like a house of mirrors. Twisted reflections designed to make you look distorted. But mirrors only work in darkness. The moment light enters, the illusion breaks. And that's what you did. You brought light just by staying real. You didn't have to prove anything. You lived your proof. Every person who spoke about you from first-hand experience became another crack in their false reality. Now they're scrambling, trying to patch the narrative with excuses. But it's too late. People have seen the truth. And once the curtain falls, no one can unsee the act. Their audience left. Their credibility vanished. And their version of you no longer exists anywhere but in their own frustration. They didn't just lose control of your name. They lost ownership of their own mask. When the truth finally speaks, the liars start whispering. That's the stage they're in now. Panic mode. They can't delete what's already been revealed. They can't reframe what's already been confirmed. The same voices they used to spread rumors are now echoing your praise. That's karma in real time. They thought they were writing your ending, chosen one. But all they did was draft your resurrection story. The universe flipped their script, edited out their lies, and published the truth in bold print. They didn't just lose control. They lost their narrative. And now the world is finally reading the real version of you. Number 6. You lived so real, even strangers became your alibi. When your truth is consistent, even people who barely know you start defending your name. You didn't need to explain who you were. You didn't have to post deep captions or beg for validation. You just lived right day after day, quietly, consistently. You didn't fake peace for attention. You were peace. You didn't smile for cameras. You smiled because your spirit stayed unbothered. That's what separated you from the noise. While others were busy performing goodness, you were being it. And when the investigator came looking for cracks in your story, all they found was proof that your character was solid from every angle. Imagine this. People who barely knew your name still saying, "Yeah, they're good people. Always calm, always respectful, no rehearsed loyalty, no forced support, just natural consistency." That's what terrified your enemies, because they built their hope on the assumption that your image would collapse under pressure. They expected mixed opinions, jealousy, contradictions. Instead, they got harmony. Person after person repeating the same message. They're genuine. That's not coincidence. That's alignment. Energy doesn't lie. It leaves fingerprints wherever you go. You didn't need to charm anyone or manipulate perceptions. You were simply yourself, and that energy was enough. It's wild how honesty travels. It spreads without words. People remember the way you carried yourself, the way you didn't engage in gossip, the way you treated everyone the same. That's why even strangers vouched for you. They didn't have to know your story to feel your sincerity. And let's be real, your enemies hate that kind of quiet power. They can fake smiles, fake confidence, fake friendships, but they can't fake authenticity. They can't replicate that stillness that says, "I'm good with or without your approval." You were never chasing clicks or trying to be seen. You were simply showing up as you. That's what built your credibility. And when truth has witnesses who owe you nothing, lies can't compete. You can't assassinate a character that's been verified by reality itself. The investigator didn't just find a good reputation. He found consistency across every level of your life. From coworkers to casual acquaintances. From people you helped to those who barely crossed your path. It all matched. No contradictions, no chaos, just a steady, grounded frequency that spoke louder than any defense you could have made. That's when your enemies started to panic, because they realized your reputation wasn't built on popularity. It was built on proof, and proof doesn't break. They tried to twist your silence into mystery. But silence was your strength. You didn't leave loose ends for anyone to grab onto. Every corner of your life was clean. Not perfect, but real. When you live in truth, your life becomes your testimony. You were never performing purity. You were just living in peace. That's why even people who didn't like you still couldn't lie about you. They might not vibe with your energy, but they respect it. And that's power. Not the loud, showy kind, but the quiet kind that can't be questioned. So when the report came back glowing, your enemies weren't shocked by the result. They were crushed by the realization. They finally understood that your name didn't survive because of luck. It survived because it was earned. You've been living so authentically that even strangers can vouch for you. That's the kind of truth no investigation can touch. Number 7, they laughed at your solitude. Now they're choking on its silence. The same silence they mocked became the silence that saved you. They used to smirk when you kept to yourself. They said you were too quiet, too proud, too distant. They mistook your peace for weakness and your privacy for arrogance. They didn't understand that solitude was never your prison. It was your protection. While they were busy trading secrets and performing friendship for attention, you were building something solid. A life free from unnecessary noise. You didn't isolate yourself because you were afraid of people. You just refused to mix with anything that didn't match your energy. And now, when the spotlight has turned harsh, that solitude they mocked has become your greatest weapon. They had circles of gossip. You had circles of peace. While they were laughing together in group chats filled with shade, you were minding your business, planting seeds of integrity. While they were bonding over other people's mistakes, you were learning from your own in silence. They thought their alliances made them strong. But alliances built on lies are made of paper. One question from the investigator, and the whole thing burned down. Your solitude, though, stood like stone. Imagine this. The investigator starts asking around, digging for your name in their mess. Suddenly, they realize your hands are clean. Your choices impeccable. Your actions transparent. Your life an open book that no one can manipulate. And in that silence, you became untouchable. Number 9, you were never in those rooms, never part of those whisper networks. You were never tied to the fake drama they created. Your distance became your shield. The walls they called cold were actually gates of wisdom. Every step you took away from their noise now echoes like a smart move that saved your reputation. They mistook your silence for emptiness. But silence is where the wise prepare. You weren't lonely, you were strategic. You saw what others couldn't. That fake company costs more than honest solitude. You stayed out of the spotlight because you understood how fast light can expose not just others, but the ones standing too close. That foresight kept you untouchable when the rumors started flying. They don't laugh now. They can't because the same distance they ridiculed now makes them look reckless. They were loud, visible, and messy. You were calm, quiet, and calculated. And when the question started, who said this, who was involved, your name never came up, not once. That's not luck. That's discipline. Maybe you've wondered, was it worth it staying away from everyone? Look around. You're standing tall while their alliances collapse under the weight of their own deceit. The very solitude they mocked has proven to be divine strategy. Protection disguised as distance. They called you antisocial, now they call you smart. They used to whisper that you thought you were better. Now they whisper that you were right. Peace doesn't need a crowd, it needs clarity. And you had it all along. While they mistook noise for power, you mastered silence. And now the universe has turned that silence into armor so strong, even the sharpest lies bounce off. They laughed once, but now every echo of that laughter reminds them. They should have never underestimated the one who knew how to walk alone. Number 10, the good gossip became your shield in the war they started. When your truth walks ahead of you, lies can only follow and trip over their own feet. You didn't even realize it, chosen one. You were building your own protection long before the battle began. Every small act of integrity, every quiet moment where you chose peace over pettiness, was stacking invisible armor around you. While your enemies were plotting their next smear, the universe was already gathering witnesses on your behalf. People were speaking well of you in rooms you didn't even know existed. That wasn't luck, that was legacy. Because when you live honestly, your name becomes your defense. Imagine this. While they were rehearsing lies, someone else was casually telling the truth about you. A coworker said, they've always been respectful. A neighbor mentioned, they keep to themselves, never in drama. A friend said, they're solid, always calm, even under pressure. One after another, those simple truths became your bulletproof vest. By the time your enemies took aim, the gossip they started bounced right off, because the universe had already armed you with a reputation built from real behavior. Good gossip is the reward of clean living. It spreads quietly but defends loudly. That's what happened here. The lies never stood a chance because your track record was too consistent to contradict. Even people who barely knew you had the same story. Stable, respectful, real, and that's what drove your enemies crazy. They expected chaos, but they found calm. They wanted evidence of weakness, but they ran into proof of strength. They tried to assassinate your character, not realizing your character was already protected by witnesses who owed you nothing, but spoke the truth. Anyway, this wasn't just social defense. It was spiritual warfare. They weren't attacking your image. They were attacking your identity. They wanted to strip you of credibility, peace, and self-respect. But they didn't understand authenticity is armor. Every time you refused to argue, every time you let silence do the talking, every time you showed grace when anger was easier, you were reinforcing that armor. You didn't just survive the war. You neutralized it before it began. You were never unprotected. You were just underestimated. They mistook your calm for vulnerability. But calmness is the language of the powerful. You didn't need to fight dirty because your integrity fought for you. When the judgment came, the verdict was already written, untouchable. Your name, your actions, your consistency, those were your spiritual weapons. And in the end, their lies didn't just miss the target. They ricocheted and exposed who the real enemy was. They wanted to destroy your name, chosen one. Instead, they made it echo with honor. Number 11, you became the plot twist that rewrote their whole story. They wanted to narrate your downfall, but your truth hijacked the script. They thought they had your life figured out. In their story, you were the villain, the one who was too quiet, too confident, too mysterious. They painted your peace as arrogance, your confidence as manipulation, your difference as danger. They thought that if they repeated the same lie enough times, it would become fact. But the universe doesn't reward repetition. It rewards truth. And when the truth finally entered the room, it flipped the entire narrative upside down. They thought they were writing your ending. But what they didn't realize is that they were only setting the stage for your reveal. Every whisper, every rumor, every shade-filled conversation was unknowingly building suspense for your comeback. When the investigator came looking for dirt, he didn't find darkness. He found discipline. He didn't find secrets. He found structure. And that's when the story cracked wide open. The people who were supposed to back up their lies couldn't. The facts didn't match the fiction. You didn't just survive the smear campaign. You exposed it. They built a rumor. The truth built a revolution. The twist wasn't loud. It was poetic. The same people who once nodded along to the lies began questioning everything. Wait, if they were so bad, why does everyone describe them the same way? Calm, kind, focused. That's when panic hit your enemies. Their words had lost gravity. Their storylines collapsed under the weight of proof. And suddenly, you weren't the villain. You were the balance, the steady one, the calm in the middle of chaos. Imagine the silence in their circle when the report came out clean. All the tension they'd built, all the anticipation for your supposed exposure, gone. Because the truth didn't just come out, it showed out. And here what shook them to their core. The investigator wasn't just doing a job. That was timing. Divine timing disguised as coincidence. The universe stepped in right when their lie was about to take root and said enough. You didn't beg for justice. You didn't chase closure. You stood still, and truth did the chasing for you. They tried to reduce you to a rumor, but truth promoted you to revelation. That's what happens when your character is stronger than their story. You became the plot twist no one saw coming. The one who proved that silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. You didn't fight back with noise. You fought back with evidence. You didn't defend yourself with words. Your life did it for you. Every moment you stayed calm. Every time you refused to retaliate was another sentence written in your favor. They wanted to destroy your name, but they ended up destroying their credibility. They wanted the crowd to turn against you, but the crowd turned on them. They wanted to write your ending, but instead they edited themselves out of the book entirely. And now the world is reading your story the way it was always meant to be told. Not as a tragedy, but as a testimony. The truth didn't just clear you, it crowned you. You didn't just survive the investigation, you rose through it. They thought they were creating your downfall. But what they really did was hand you your spotlight. Because when the light hit, only one story stood tall. The real one. And it had your name all over it. Number 12, The Awakening. And now, chosen one, you see it clearly. Every rumor, every setup, every whisper was never your ending. It was your awakening. They tried to investigate your life. But the only thing they exposed was their own envy. You didn't just survive. You rose above every lie with proof, peace, and power. The truth spoke for you louder than any defense ever could.